Line's good.
Never on!
Whoa.
Hard! Hardly.
Come on, Brent.
Line's good.
Got real close.
I hear high, right?
Try and hit 2/3.
Have they saved it for her? Yes, they have.
Ooh, welcome to Game of Stones, everybody. I am Sean Graham, Scott alongside, as always. Hello, Scott.
Sean, I was telling you before we got started that I've been watching this 90 Day Fiance. So good. Yeah. I'm sure a lot of people out there listen to or watch it. Holy cow. It's just great. It does make me feel like a little better about my life compared to these other train wrecks, but it's fun TV, and that's what I'm going to be doing later on tonight. Watching more.
Scott, do any of the couples have a chance, a long-term chance, in your opinion?
Oh, sure. Yeah. The one that's on right now that's airing is before the 90 days. So it's
Right.
like the very beginnings of these relationships. And I don't know, like they don't seem well suited to each other, but the heart wants what it wants. Love finds a way. And there you go.
Oh, what a beautiful sentiment, Scott. You're such a robot.
Yeah, I guess apropos of nothing. I just thought I'd bring that in for the start of the show today.
Very nice. I guess there's also not much else to do here in Ontario, particularly here in Ottawa, and certainly between here and Toronto. A lot of the things are shut down as the provincial lockdown continues here in Ontario, and we had a couple feet of snow, Scott, on Monday in the midst of the snowstorm. I way overdue, but I committed to write a piece about a small memorial here in Ottawa for my friend's project. And I had written it, again, way overdue, but I did it. But I realized that I hadn't gone and got measurements of it when I took photos of it in the summer. So I thought, I should go get measurements to make the article a little more specific. And I walked over on Monday, not thinking to myself that, of course, this monument wouldn't have been plowed out, or shoveled out. Why would it be? So here I am, some weirdo, 5:30 Monday night in the dark in a driving snowstorm, digging out with my hands and feet a 5-foot tall monument at the corner of Gladstone and Bay Street here in Ottawa, and then taking out my tape measure and having some guy who was shoveling his driveway give me a real hard side eye, because this made no sense at all. Yeah.
Wow. You couldn't have picked a better day, right, Sean? Just go out for that experience.
Yeah. Well, I wrote the thing on Sunday, and I was like, I really wanted to get it off, and it bummed me out on Sunday when I was like, ooh, it was about 11 o'clock Sunday night. It's like, I really should get the measurements on it. And I was like, I got to do it Monday. And the hell with the snow. I am going and getting these measurements on Monday. 50 inches tall.
Okay. And that's a lot taller than the snow was, so that's good.
Yeah, I only had to dig out the bottom half of it.
Oh, okay. Fine. Okay.
It was fine.
Well, yeah, Sean, my car is still in the driveway. I don't know. They're supposed to come and plow the driveway, but I don't know how they're going to, because I can't get out. So
it was so much snow. It's kind of crazy. Really remarkable. Yeah. And we're glad. I was glad to hear, I'm sure, Scott, I speak for you, that no real serious injuries that I've heard about. There was a story here in the city of an older gentleman who had slipped and fallen, but an 8-year-old kid who was home from school saw him and essentially rescued him. So good stories like that you hear, but hopefully everyone's doing well here in central Canada, dealing with those storms. So there you have it. Scott, we are exactly 2 weeks away from the start of the curling competition at the Olympic Games in Beijing. The mixed doubles competition kicks off on February the 2nd, which is Wednesday night in Beijing. It'll be, of course, Wednesday morning here for us in North America. The opening ceremony kicks off on the 3rd, on Friday. So we'll get 2 days, or a day and a bit, of curling prior to the opening ceremony. Scott, as we are fast approaching the Olympic Games, we wanted to dive into it and answer some pressing questions that at least I have about the curling this year in Beijing.
That's right, Sean. 10 questions to get us all primed and thinking about the curling competition at the whatever number Olympiad it is.
Yes. So we have 10 questions here. We're going to run through them. These are big questions, some big issues that are at play coming up here at the Olympic Games. So let's delve right in, Scott, with I think the question that nobody really will know the answer to, but I want to get your sense of it. And that is, will everybody actually be able to play who has qualified for these games? There was a story last night on the CBC that the Chinese government is imposing a stricter set of testing on the athletes than, at least in Canada, that the Canadian government has for approval to get on planes and stuff. So there's some concern that if you've had COVID, that the remnants in your system might trigger a positive on these Chinese tests. The Chinese government has said that that's not true, but it's the Chinese government, so who knows whether or not that's an accurate statement. But Scott, what do you think the odds are that of the 100 individuals who are qualified to play, the main players, not the fifths, the main 100 individuals who have qualified, what are the odds that all of them are able to play?
That's probably pretty low that all of them will for sure be able to play. That report that you mentioned that we saw last night on the national, it said that that kind of test that the Chinese officials are using for the Olympics is very likely to pick up if somebody had been previously infected with COVID. And even if they weren't contagious now, they would still pick that up on the sensitivity of PCR that they're going to be using. So even if you're vaccinated, you still could get COVID, as we've seen here in Ontario the last month or so. So, if you still have that in your body and this PCR picks it up, I don't know if you're going to have to test negative 2 times in a row after that, what it's going to be. But I think it's very likely that at least one player will get flagged for that.
Yeah, I agree that I think someone will get dinged at some point along the way. Hopefully, we don't see an outbreak within curling or within a team. But if it happens to a mixed doubles player, you don't have extra players in mixed doubles. So it would really be unfortunate to see a team have to withdraw from the mixed doubles competition. Mark Kennedy last week on Inside Curling talked about how if there is a positive test on the men's team, then John Morris can step in if necessary as almost a 6th player if that test happens early enough. Same thing on the women's side. Rachel Homan could step in and play. And I don't want any of the players to get COVID, but the idea of Jennifer Jones yelling at second Rachel Homan to sweep is a delightful visual to think about that happening. But of course, we don't want that to actually happen. It's more fun to talk about than to actually see it. But that is a factor that could be, there's a little more wiggle room there on the men's and women's play than there is in the mixed doubles. But certainly you would expect that somebody is going to trigger a positive test, not out of any fault of their own, just that's the world that we currently live in. We saw at the World Qualification event, I believe it's the Czech Republic women's team had to withdraw from that event with 3 positive tests. So I think that's just how it's going to be. And we hope that's not the case, but it's certainly likely that out of those 100, someone will not be able to play.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned that would be a pretty fun situation to see Rachel and Jen on the same team together. But I do believe the fifths from the men's and women's team are going over early and are able to step in the case of a positive test pre-event from either the man or woman on the mixed doubles team. So at least in the Canadian context, they've planned ahead for that.
Right. So you have then Mark and Lisa Weigel would be going.
That's right.
Case. Those are 2 good players too. I mean, if either Rachel or John test positive and they're there and they can play, they're good players. Nothing wrong with either of those.
For sure.
All right, Scott. Big question number 2. How will the ice conditions be at the Ice Cube? This is the facility where they're going to be doing the curling. It is right across the street. Not even the street, right across like a pedestrian walkway area from the Olympic Stadium. I had the opportunity when I was in Beijing back in 2016 to visit the Olympic Park. It is beautiful, and going to the Olympic Stadium. So it's just a short walk right across a magnificent facility. But it was also a pool a couple years ago. So will that impact the conditions? We have seen when the World Championship was in Beijing, the ice conditions weren't the greatest. Now, granted, that was further in the spring, where it was a little warmer in Beijing. They had a heat wave during that event. Looking at the forecast right now, it's around freezing in Beijing. So with a little above freezing for the highs. Beijing is a city that can have some humidity as well. So, how will the ice conditions work? What have they done to this building? Will it be world class conditions? And that's something that it'll be interesting to see how the building reacts to having this major event.
Yeah, it'll be interesting for the building for sure. We saw this in Vancouver. That's a pretty humid climate, especially in January, February. A lot of rain. Temperature is usually around 6 to 8, 5 degrees or around there. So a little bit colder in Beijing. It's more continental than Vancouver, climate wise. It is on the water, but the way that the currents work and the way air moves, it's a little more continental. So I don't think there's going to be any problem here. We saw the ice conditions in Vancouver were great. The ice techs that are going to make that, or who have gone to make it, they know what they're doing. They had pretty good ice at the World Cup events that they had. And, one of those was in August and in Shanghai, where it was 35 degrees. I checked on the Chinese weather there, Sean, and I wasn't aware, but it came up in Fahrenheit first. I was like, holy cow, 40 degrees, look out. But no, that was Fahrenheit. So yeah,
climate change is really hitting China.
Yeah. So it should be good. I think repurposing the venue won't be that big a deal. China is very familiar with how to pull off big infrastructure projects and doing it in the right amount of time and well enough. So I wouldn't be worried about that.
Yeah, and from all accounts, the conditions at the World Wheelchair Curling Championship back in the fall, which was in this building, were pretty good. Now, that event doesn't put the same pressure on the ice in that there's no sweeping. So hog to hog, you don't have the same damage to the ice that is done through sweeping. So this just leads to question: will the ice be able to hold up for 10 ends of sweeping? Those games are also 8 ends. So that's a question, but it'll be interesting to see how the conditions are there in the Ice Cube. Really a premier spot when you're looking at that Olympic Park. So it should be a lot of fun for the players to be there.
Yeah, and a venue that'll be in use for even more than the 16 days of the Olympics. So
that's right. Every day plus 2. It's gonna be so long. All right, Scott, big question number 3. All of these events, men's, women's, mixed doubles, are a 9-game round robin with 10 teams in the field. So one of our favorite questions to ask at all these events: what is the magic number for losses? What do you think a team can safely afford in a 10-team field?
I think 3 is the magic number, and 4 might get you something. What do you think?
5 and 4. I agree. I think if you look back, if you want to go to 2018, 5 and 4 got something. I believe in both men's and women's, and you are likely to, especially with how good these fields are. I think 5 and 4 should get you something. But yeah, 3 is the number. So 6 and 3, and you should be safely in. And if you're 7 and 2, you're looking at one of the top 2 spots. But once you get to 3, if you're 1 and 3, you really gotta put the foot to the pedal.
Yeah, it's going to be real tough to come back if you get down that much early.
Yeah, and so schedule, I think, is going to play a bit of a role in this sort of sequencing. Who do you get early? Who do you get late? How much are teams going to need to learn the ice going into it? Is that going to be an equalizer early on potentially? Or do you see something like what we saw in 2018 with the Garlic Girls, where they start hot and then just stay hot over the course of the week, and they never really lost it until maybe the gold medal game? But is that a case? Are we going to see that again of a team just get hot and roll through?
Yeah, it could be.
All right, Scott, to question number 4. Is it possible that one person will be able to pull off a double medal in Beijing? The thus far unaccomplished 2 medals in one Olympic Games. Is somebody like a Bruce Mouat going to be able to pull this off?
Yeah, I think somebody will, Sean, and I think you identified
Okay.
the guy who can do it. If we talk about medaling, if we talk about
Yeah.
gold medal, he's also the one that could do it.
Okay.
I think that would be most likely to do it.
Okay. So the options are, if I have all this right, we got Amos Massaner for Italy playing in both. Oscar Eriksson will be in both. Bruce Mouat, Jennifer Dodds will be in both. So the entire Great Britain team. And Chris Plies, Vicky Persinger will both be playing. Or excuse me, Vicky Persinger is not playing in the women. So just Chris Plies on the men's side for the United States. And
For
Magnus
Team
is
Norway?
he's the 5th. So that, let's not count that. So we got then
Tough Magnus.
Yeah. So we got here then Bruce Mouat, Oscar Eriksson, Chris Plies, Amos Massaner as the options.
Yeah, because who is Oscar playing with for Sweden?
Almeida Duval.
That's right. Because I would have thought either Oscar, he's got a chance, right?
Oh yeah,
to get
definitely.
that gold medal. But I would put Bruce Mouat as the favorite if I was, creating betting favorites amongst those players that are playing in both. Bruce Mouat would be my guess.
Okay.
Be my top-rated person.
Yeah, and I said no women, but I also said Jennifer Dodds. So Jennifer Dodds is the one woman who's doing both. So my apologies to Jennifer Dodds. I think it's going to be tough. The issue is that these games are so spread out. There's so many buys. I believe it's 13 draws, and you're playing 9 games. So it's just there's so much downtime that I do wonder if the mental toll of being in an event. So if you're Jennifer Dodds, for instance, if you win the gold medal, the women's competition starts the next day. Bruce Mouat and the other men would get a day off before the men's competition start, because the women's gold medal game is Saturday, and then the men's gold medal game is the Sunday, the right before the closing ceremony. So I do wonder, just can you be in the zone? Can you be playing at your highest level for that long? I don't know if mentally you can. Physically, these people all could. The mental strain of that, I don't know. If someone does it, that might be the most impressive thing we've seen in curling, maybe ever, to be a double gold medalist in one Olympics.
And especially for somebody like Mouat who's skipping in the men's game.
Yeah.
Like you say, I think the physical toll would be tougher for Jen, but for Bruce to keep his head in the game and be able to come through really 16 days of action, more than 16, sorry, 18 days.
18 days.
That'd be tough. That'd
be really tough. Yeah, absolutely. So we'll see if that can happen. Scott, question number 5. I think the wild card in this whole event is the Chinese side. We don't know what to expect from all 3 of the teams who are going to be representing China. Scott, how do you think the host country is going to do at the 2022 Olympics?
I think their best chances in the women's field, which sounds silly because there's quite a strong quartet, I would say, at the top of the women's field. But we've heard a lot about their young skip for a long time. They've been training basically to play this event. They'll have an advantage in, not having to do the travel portion, all the tests to get in, all the, I won't say strange food, but you're not eating your usual diet. Yeah. Like all these things that we've heard curlers talk about when they go overseas anywhere. Plus the conditions of being in the Olympic bubble is going to be more stressful than a normal event. So I think that's where the Chinese teams will have the advantage. That said, you're right. We haven't seen them play anybody who's going to be there in 2 years. right? Because they skipped the Worlds last year and the qualifying event.
No, Yuhan played in the Worlds.
Okay.
She went to the bubble, so she was there. So she's played, but she passed Pacific Asia champion in 2019. But yes, China skipped the Pacific Asia Curling Championship this year, so they're not
Right.
going to the
That's
World
it. That's what they
Championship. They
skipped.
punted on that. So yeah, we haven't seen them in
Mhm.
a high level competition in a while.
Yeah, so that's where you have some worry. Now they have, I believe, Pale Lindholm is the head of the Chinese program now, and if you're gonna want anybody to coach your young program, he's got to be near the top of the list, if not at the top.
Mhm.
So that there's just a lot of unknowns, like you said, and maybe the mixed doubles team will give us a feel for how prepared they are. It's going to be hard watching, just watching online and not being there and able to talk to them about all the prep they've done. So you're right. I think this is a big wild card. That said, because we haven't seen them play, I've got to give the edge to those teams that we have seen play, which is maybe a recency bias thing. But
Sure.
what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I think that Yuhan is probably the best bet for a medal from China. Mixed doubles is kind of who knows, because anything can happen in those games. But certainly the
Mm.
men have not had a tradition of success at any sort of international competition other than the Pacific Asia Curling Championship. So I don't have high hopes for them, especially with how good the top of that field is on the men's side. Whereas the women's field, I think they're just going to all beat up on each other for a while there, and that's why I think 5 and 4 will get you something, because they're all so good. So it's going to be hard to run away from the field in terms of the wins and the losses. So I'm with you on that front. And the cultural thing, I think is going to, or could matter, right? And I can only lean on my experience, where little things that you just notice, and it took me about a week to kind of pick up on little things. Now granted, I wasn't going there to compete in an Olympics. I was going there to do my job, to teach at the university there. But little things of, now the Olympians won't be doing this, like how to cross the street, which was very different and more nerve-wracking than I thought it was going to be. Like the just traffic patterns were a little different. Or even, I had my teaching assistants were assigned, part of their assignment to us, the Western faculty, was to help us get dinner and get lunch, because the sort of little things that either we couldn't communicate, because where we were, a lot of people didn't speak English in the community. So they would help us with that. My TAs eventually taught me a couple phrases that I could go into a restaurant and buy things myself. But again, yeah, the food was a little different, so you just get used to that. And certainly when you're an elite athlete and you're so used to having meal plans and regimens, like will that potentially throw you? Where in the COVID circumstance, you might not have the same amount of freedom
Mm-hmm.
to recreate your situation at home at the Olympic Games as you might be able, or might have been able to do in 2018 or 2014 or 2010. It could potentially be a factor, and it'll be interesting to see how those teams deal with that. Now, from a Canadian standpoint, Gushu, Jennifer Jones have played in China before, so
Mm-hmm.
they would have some familiarity with all that, as of Rachel Homan and John Morris. So, but for some of the other teams, just that's a little thing that has isn't necessarily an on ice thing, obviously, but could impact on ice performance.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
All right, so got question number 6. What style of play do we expect across the board? We talked about it going into the Canadian Olympic curling trials. That as the pressure ramps up, we tend to see a more conservative style of play from the teams. We didn't really see that so much at the Olympic curling trials. I was pleased that it was much
Mm-hmm.
more aggressive than I expected it to be. But once we get to the Olympics, all these different contrasting styles, are we going to see a trend emerge in how teams are playing this?
Well, I'm looking at the teams that are in this event, and certainly on the women's side, I see a lot of teams that don't mind mixing it up.
Yeah.
Now, you could say Anna Hasselberg and Silvana Tiranzoni, they tend to play like maybe a little more defensive, but when they go, they can go, right? The US team, I would suspect to maybe play a little more defensive, although it seems like they've been more aggressive since Tabitha took over as skip. Otherwise, I would expect this to be like, okay, let's go, let's mix it up. I know for Jennifer Jones for sure isn't gonna sit back and wait for the game to come to her. She's gonna take it on from end one. So on the women's side, yeah, I do think we'll see some fun, high scoring games. On the men's side, maybe a little less of that. It used to be that the women's game was the one that was more boring, quote unquote, boring to watch because they would play peels to bank time.
Yeah.
And now we see that a little more on the men's side, right? Or on the men's side, we see the upweight ability, being able to get somebody out of an end. Oh, I don't like the way these rocks are set up. I'm going to throw a run back, double peel, and then, okay, now we're just exchanging stones back and forth. So that's how I see it, Sean. What is your read?
I think on the women's side, I think we're still going to see burning the first, which is pretty common still on the women's side, more on the women's side than on the men's side. I think we're going to see that. And I think what we're going to see on the men's side is the disparity of, I don't want to say talent because that sounds disrespectful to some of the teams, but maybe the perceived disparity in talents where, yeah, I think we have a pretty clear top 3, top 4 teams. I think we might see those bottom 6 teams or those other 6 teams maybe try to play more conservative, try to keep it close, try to frustrate those teams as they're playing them. So they might not want to mix it up as much. So if they lose the draw to the button, don't have the hammer in the first end, we're seeing things come in, right? You're playing top 4 and not wanting to mix it up, trying to essentially shorten the game to a 6, 5, even 4 end game if you can. I that's what I wonder about, and I think we might see that on the men's side. Women's side, we have I think a little more balance in the field. I think you're right that they're going to mix it up. I do expect some burning events early in games, but I think overall we'll see a much more interesting game on the women's side. And on the mixed doubles side, there's really nothing you can do. You just gotta play.
Crazy.
It's always crazy. There's always going to be stuff in play there.
Yeah. That's a good read. I mean, the mixed doubles, yeah, it's just going to be fun and fast. And then my wonder is, how is it going to feel going to the 4-person game after watching that? I remember in 2018, it was like, oh, this is slower.
Yeah.
Why is this taking so long? So
yeah, it felt so much.
We'll see how that feels after.
And also the mixed doubles is taking like 6 days.
Yeah.
The 4-person event is not taking 6 days. All right, Scott. Question number 7, and this is Chris Plies tweeted that he thinks this is the first time that the United States has a legitimate opportunity to medal in all 3 disciplines. Now, if they do that, he will have won 2 medals. So good job, Chris Plies. Like, pump yourself up, my man. Do you agree with Chris Plies? Is this the best American contingent we've ever seen at the Olympics? And do you believe in the idea that they can medal in all 3 disciplines?
It's probably the best American contingent that we've seen. Schuster, of course, won gold last time, so he's got experience doing it. I think if he hadn't, Sean, had his magical walk on the beach or walk on the pier that he had, I don't think we would be saying that. We haven't seen them come out and win a bunch of Grand Slams in the intervening 4 years. With Chris on their team, I do think they're stronger than with Tyler George 4 years ago. So I think they have a chance to medal. I wouldn't make them one of the top 4 favorites though. So
sure,
we'll get into previewing the event at another time, but I think there's a clear 3, and then they're in that next group right below it. On the women's side, the women's field is deep, Sean. Like, looking at it, there's some really good teams. I could see any one of 5 or maybe even 6 different teams winning this with the gold medal, and the US team would be towards the bottom of that that
Yeah.
grouping, if in it at all. And then in mixed doubles, I mean, who knows, right? Uh, that anybody can win. I would
Yep.
be surprised if, I would be surprised if the Czechs won, but maybe Australia. But anybody else,
Right.
yeah, okay, I could see that.
Yeah. No, I agree. I do. I think this is a very strong contingent. What's interesting though is that there's not that much change in the 4-person teams from 4 years ago. Right. It's just the switch.
No,
Nina Ross not skipping anymore. You have Tabitha Peterson in the skips role, and it's Chris Plies in place of Tyler George. So it's not like a real sea change in terms of personnel on the 4-person side for the Americans, but since that change, as you mentioned, to Tabitha Peterson, they have been so good since
hmm
that switch. Nina Ross, baby, MVP of this team for like the necessity of creating that, or giving Tabitha Peterson that opportunity almost. And
yeah.
on the men's side, yeah, I agree. I mean, Tyler George is a great player, certainly, but yeah, Chris Plies does feel like a stronger, more consistent player than Tyler
And
George.
maybe more with the sweeping than anything else.
Yeah,
Tyler is a great player and had a lot of experience calling line, a great thrower, but for some reason, I just feel like a little more comfortable
yeah.
with Chris on the team, and he's shown that in the last 4 years.
Maybe that's because his shoes are going to last for the whole game whenever he steps out there, which wasn't a guarantee with
Yeah,
Tyler
that's
George.
that's probably why.
And then I don't know, like on the mixed doubles, yeah, anything can happen. I don't know. Is it fair to say that Plies and Persinger are definitively better than the Hamiltons? I don't know, or are definitively more of a medal threat than the Hamiltons were 4 years ago. I don't know. I mean, the Hamiltons are very good at mixed doubles, and obviously they didn't win this time, but
I think Chris has just thrown some shade
showing them shade
at
at his
Matt.
teammate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we're better than you, bud.
Yeah, so certainly anything can happen, and the women's side is going to be the toughest of those medals if
For
they're
sure.
going to sweep. I'd go deeper than you, Scott. I think 7, maybe even 8 could win out of those 10 teams. It's so good, that women's field. But as you say,
It's really good.
we'll do the full preview of that coming up in the time before that event kicks off. So let's move on to question number 8, which is somewhat related. Will there be an upset team to win a medal? And Scott, I'm going to define an upset team as a team from a country that is not participating in all 3 disciplines. So there are 6 countries that are represented in all 3 disciplines, that being Canada, China, Great Britain, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United States. So that leaves all those other countries, Italy, Australia, the Czechs, etc., in the disciplines. Will one of those countries come away with a medal?
I'll say yes,
Okay.
and I'll tell you my top favorites for that. I would say would be Elena Kovaleva's team on the women's,
Yep.
Yunjin Kim on the women's, and sorry, there was one other I was thinking of,
On
but
the
I've
women, I
forgotten
mean,
it.
I think if you're looking at on the men's side, probably Joel Ray Turnaz,
Yes, that was it.
probably the biggest
Italy,
threat there. Yeah.
Italy on the men's side.
Yeah, I think I'm with you there. Yeah, I think I'm with you there. And I also I wouldn't sleep either on Russia on the men's side either, and Sergei Glukov. They were so good in the bubble. So
Yeah, but they were so bad in the bees, Euro bees.
they really were. They were terrible there. So who knows what we're gonna get
No, I think they won. I
from
think
them.
they won it, right? Didn't they win in
No,
advance?
they ran through. I thought they lost the final. They still get to go up, but that it was that last game where they weren't good. But I believe they went through the round robin undefeated.
Yeah. So
Um,
bad, right?
well, they shouldn't have lost any in the B. They're too good to lose anything.
Yes.
So even to lose that final, yeah. So certainly the Russians would be the ones that could, I think, are the biggest threats there. Yeah, the South Koreans on the women's side. On the mixed double side, who knows? Again, we've said it before. Australia, the Czech Republic, Norway, Skazlian and Magnus
Yeah.
are very good players, and certainly the Italians on the mixed double side, where you got Constantini, who just missed the Olympics on the women's side, and Mosaner is playing. who has gotten so much better this quad. So maybe
Mhm.
I'm not going to bank on it. If I were to bet, I don't think I'd bet on any of them to medal. I'd go with those 6 to get all of the medals, but it wouldn't necessarily be a surprise to see one of them walking out of the ice cube with a medal.
For sure, for sure. So what's next, Sean?
Question number 9, the penultimate question. Scott, does Canada have to win a medal this time?
Yes.
Okay.
If honestly, if there's 0 medals for Canada across those 3 disciplines, I think we're going to see huge changes to the qualification process, and we might even see teams being put together for the next quad.
Wow.
By Curling Canada.
So you think it's like major changes if
major changes, yeah,
they don't win something?
Yeah.
Okay, I think the most likely change that's made, even if Canada wins something, is a change to when the trials are, moving them in response to what happened this year with the mixed doubles. If you do have a situation where you have to cancel it or postpone, that there isn't enough time to do that, even if it's just earlier into the fall, which is hard to put it in, say, October and try to have everybody peak for the event at that point. But I think we'll see a shift in the calendar. They did move it up this year, even just a week, but it was moved up. So maybe we'll see a switch there. I do think that we'll probably see changes in the coaching structure with how the National High Performance Program operates. We've seen snippets of this come out in the last couple of years of, once you become Team Canada, the almost intrusion of sorts of new coaches and people who come in, as opposed to letting the team just do what has made them successful. And maybe we'll see a recalibration of how that relationship goes once you become Team Canada. Having Curling Canada assign teams, though, that's going to be tough. That's going to be tough to swallow for everyone. I think for the players, for the fans, that would be tough.
Yeah, sure. But if they're not getting the results that they want out of this, that's what the goal is, right? Is to win medals at the Olympics.
That's part of the goal. That's Curling Canada's high. That's Curling Canada's high performance goal.
Yeah,
that's not the organization's entire goal.
No, but it's a big part of what they're trying to do, right? Like,
yeah.
And if we see other associations that have taken that approach of choosing a team, like the Great Britain approach for this year, if we see that succeed, Sean, I think Curling Canada can just say, hey, like everybody else is doing it, guys. We haven't won medals. We won 1 medal in the last 2 Olympics. We got to change something.
They will have to change something, yeah.
Well, yeah, like how do you say no to that, right? How do you, as a curling fan, say no, keep doing it the same way? I don't think you can. I mean, other than the fact that you like giving everybody a chance. I like it too.
Yeah.
But if the goal is to come through with medals, and you're not achieving that, then
yeah, I think the question would be, though, that, or for me at least, is does that hurt too much of the rest of the curling calendar? Like, are you sacrificing the other 3 years of the cycle for the Olympics? And this is really what the Olympics has done to the sport. And I guess that's fair. I mean, people love the Olympics. It's the pinnacle of sport and all that stuff. Just don't read anything about what the IOC does, and you can still feel really great about the Olympics in its totality. The athletes are great. The organization maybe not so much, but it's the Brier, the Scotties World Championships, those things that, I mean, Brier and Scotties essentially pay for everything
those pay
else.
the bills.
Yeah. So if you're going to assign to Team Canada, like, what happens to those events? What happens to the financial structure of those events? What happens to the financial structure of the teams themselves? Like that, it goes beyond just picking a team. The other ramifications of what that means would have to be addressed in their totality, I think. And are we prepared in this country to have a fundamental shift like that for the sake of the Olympic Games? And
Sean,
I don't know.
I think we're being naive to think that hasn't already been written up.
Oh, so you think the plans are there? That Curling Canada is ready to take control?
Oh, the plans are definitely at least been talked about. Like, you have to prepare for all contingencies, right? You can't just be like, oh, now we lost. What's going to happen next, right? Because then you don't have the time to implement what you're trying to implement.
Right. We got a year. Next year doesn't matter for Olympics.
Well, but it's a year where you want to be testing some stuff, and you want to be making sure all the athletes are consulted and on board. So like all that planning has to have already started.
Yeah, I do wonder what the athletes would say, the Canadian athletes would say to the potential of teams being selected by Curling Canada. The players do have some power in that, and they could potentially say no to that and just not participate. It would
But
take a Kevin Martin level of commitment to it. And, for as much as we semi-jokingly slag on Kevin Martin on the show on occasion, full credit to Kevin Martin and his commitment to what he was fighting for in the early odds. Like he made the sacrifice of not going to Briars, not being able to play in world championships. He did that, and he held hard to that. And that was to the ultimate benefit of the players. And do the players today, will they, if they feel strongly about it, will they be able to do the same?
Yeah. And I mean, I think the players feel like they want to settle the issues on the ice, right? Yeah. Let us play against each other. But instead of having a competition that's open to any team across Canada, I could see Curling Canada picking 20 men's players, 20 women's players, and saying, we'll bring you to this camp. We'll sort you into 5 teams. The winner's going.
It'd be interesting. It would certainly be interesting to see that. But those are certainly questions to
so
to
just
be asked now.
Just go and win.
Just go win, and then win 3 gold medals, and then we don't have to talk about that.
Exactly.
Yeah. So all right. So final question, Scott. Big question number 10 here of our big pressing questions as we head into the Olympic Games. Will one country, one of those 6 countries that I identified, again, Canada, China, Great Britain, Sweden, Switzerland, and the United States of America, pull what we will now call a Chris Plies and sweep the gold medals?
No, I don't think they will, that any of those countries will accomplish it. Probably the best chance is Great Britain or Canada. But it's very hard to do. We've never seen it because we've only had one mixed doubles. But even the double gold is pretty hard to do. So I'm going to say it's unlikely.
Certainly it's unlikely. I don't know if it's impossible. I would not sleep on Sweden to finally get that done.
That's true.
For as much as I said early on, I mean, it'd be hard for Oscar Eriksson to pull that off, being in both. But that, I think, is maybe more likely than a Bruce Mount one, just because, again, the mental toll that it would take, and Bruce Mount being the skip of that team. But it's going to be so hard for any country to do that. These fields are so deep, and players are so good across the board, that for any country to pull off 3 gold medals would just be a remarkable feat. Do you think it's possible that a country will podium in all 3?
Yeah, I definitely think that's possible. And Sweden, Canada, and Great Britain, I'd say, are the most likely countries for that.
Yeah, and if that happens, well, then the Olympics have been boring. I don't know.
I don't know.
Each country gets 3 medals.
We all want to see Yves Muirhead in FU mode, right?
Yeah, love it. Even FU mode is the best. I don't know. Like in terms of personal stories too, Scott, is there anyone who you want to see win a medal? Like, do you want to see Nick Edin finally get that gold medal after all those world championships? Do you want to see Yves get to the top of the podium? Do you want to see Brad Gushue or Jennifer Jones, sort of this late career shot there? Do you want to see somebody like Joel Ray Turnaz get to the top of the podium, stand there with a picture of Russ Howard in his hands? Like, what would be the most fun for you? Or are you rooting for any individuals necessarily to get a podium finish?
Yeah,
or a gold medal finish?
I think Yves Muirhead for sure. For sure. The Gushue and Jones story of, this might be their last quad retire on top. That's a good story. Seeing Kim Yoon-jun and the South Korean team come back from that silver medal and all the stuff they went through in this past 4 years, that would be pretty cool. That would be a good story, I think, for them. Other people that I'm rooting for, maybe for Norway, Torgeir Nergård, of course, won in 2002, I think, the gold medal. So 20 years later to come back with a whole different generation of Norwegian curling, that would be pretty cool. That's all. That's what I'm thinking of for me. What about you?
Fujisawa for me would be the other name I would throw out there. I love that team. They're so much fun to watch, and them winning a gold medal, for as much as they already are happy and smile and have so much fun out there, like how much, like, is it possible for them to be happier and have more fun while they're playing? Like, is that a thing that could happen? So that would be a lot of fun to see that happen. So that'd be the other name I'd throw out. And I agree with you on those other ones to see if they can do it. And I think for Nicodine, just to it's not a lot, but there are naysayers out there who are like, well, the only reason you have all these world championships is because you go all the time, and he's not actually that good, or he is that good. He's really, really good. And to get that gold medal would just be a sort of a cherry on top. And and once we get to the spring, if Anna Hasselberg chooses to play in the world championship, I'd be rooting for her for the same reason, just to cap off the career.
Yeah, cap off their careers at whatever, 28 or however old they are. Pretty young still, right? I think Nicodine is 30. He's the same age as you, Sean.
36.
So however old you are. 36.
36, yeah. He's turning 36 this year. No, turning 37 this year, if we're the same age.
Yeah.
How old am I? Yeah.
I don't know.
It's hard to keep track of. But yeah, this will be his fourth Olympic appearance. Is he there in 2010?
This will be 2010, 2014, 2018, and 2022. That's right.
Yeah. So
same for Eid Muirhead for fourth Olympics.
It's been a good run for these folks. So for as much as we think of Gushu, Jennifer Jones, or these late career, they've been around forever. So have some of these quote unquote younger players.
Yeah,
sneaky old or sneaky experienced at least at these events. Yeah. All right, Scott. So that's it. Those are our 10 burning questions leading into the Olympics. On a scale of 1 to 10, what is your excitement level for the 18 days of action forthcoming from Beijing?
As of right now, I'd say it's about a 7. Okay. I think it'll ramp up slowly. Okay. I got to get through this Buffalo Bills divisional game this weekend.
Yeah.
Once that's passed, I'll be looking to the next Bills game, hopefully, and then my excitement will build up for the Olympics. It's almost just exciting to have something, Sean. You mentioned that we're not doing anything. We're mostly just sitting at home, waiting out this wave. So that will be pretty exciting to have live things to watch.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, I agree. I think I'm looking forward to it. I think by the end of it, it might be like, all right, like let's play, like just play the games, everybody. That I might get to that point with it, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it for sure. And being here in Ontario, I know this is somewhat specific to us, and I guess our friends at PI now, from what I saw yesterday. But in this lockdown scenario, one of the reasons I put together a potential schedule for us on the show, one of the reasons I'm as aggressive on the schedule as I am is it gives me something to do. I'm just sitting around here. So it will be fun to have some live curling on that front. Just a quick note, word is out of Thunder Bay that the Scotties will be able to run as scheduled without fans in a bubble scenario. The great Thunder Bay Times, I believe it's called the Times, and I apologize if it's not, is reporting that they got approval from the provincial government. So that should be all systems go in Thunder Bay. And somewhat related to that, the Ontario curling folks announced that they're going to run a provincial championship for 2022 in April. And all of the teams that qualified for, and this is on the women's side, that qualified for the women's provincial will be invited to go. They did this for all the disciplines, by the way, that have been postponed. So mixed doubles, everything under 18. They're running them in the spring. Everyone who qualified through regionals and other things for the other disciplines will be invited to go. So I don't know how many of the top teams are going to play in that provincial championship on the women's side.
Mm-hmm.
If there's spots available and you're a team that might not usually get to go, like, I'd write Curling Ontario an email right now and say, hey, if you need teams to fill out the field, because I'll tell you, Scott, those banners are on the wall forever, and your name is on it if you can get it.
Literally, those banners are literally on the wall of the curling club forever. Yeah, I think. Well, that's great. That's great news. I hadn't heard that, Sean. And presumably these provincial championships won't advance you anywhere. Maybe it gets you an automatic bid for next year, but it's still good to have the competition take place.
Yeah, and that's what it does. In Ontario, the provincial Scotties will get you a spot in the 2023 provincial Scotties guaranteed. But if it is a top team that wins with all the lineup changes, who knows whether that's going to be of value to them. But who cares? A provincial championship is a provincial championship. So that will be fun to see in April. So that's going to be it for us for this week. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening. If you have not yet, please do subscribe to the show wherever it is you get your podcast. Do the likes, rating, comments, all that good stuff. Helps us grow the show, keeps us growing here. And do head on over to GameOfStonesPod.com. All of our past episodes are there, as well as the merch. So we click on the merch tab, take us right to the store. Everything that's there, proceeds for the t-shirts are going to Food Banks Canada. Everything else to the Sandra Schmirler Foundation. We are, of course, matching those proceeds. And if there's anything you want to hear on the show, please do reach out, gameofstonespodcast@gmail.com, or we are on social media at Game of Stones Pod, or I believe it's Game of Stones Podcast on Facebook, where apparently you can add your podcast. There's a way to do this on Facebook. Ryan from Rocks Across the Pond reached out. I applied for it. We'll see what happens. So if you don't already, facebook.com/Game of Stones Podcast, follow along and get all the fun info there. We might go live once or twice during the Olympics or during this. Who knows? If the lockdown is extended and we have nothing to do, we'll hang out. Maybe come hang out. Or even if we have stuff to do, maybe we'll still want to hang out. Who knows? But that's where all that takes place. And on Twitter, Instagram at Game of Stones Pod for some fun and frivolity. So, Scott, what are you looking forward to here as the weekend is approaching? You mentioned the Bills. Anything else going on?
Yeah, the Bills. I'm looking forward, Sean, to getting out on the Rideau Canal Skateway.
Yeah.
You posted a photo. You were out on the first day.
I was.
And then it was minus 1,000,000 degrees the rest of the week. Yeah. I had to go buy new long underwear because I guess I threw mine out. I don't know where I put it. So I'm all ready to go. And I think we'll try to get out maybe Friday evening or Saturday, get out on the skateway and have some fun in the hopefully sun.
Ain't nothing like it when it's sunny out there. There really isn't. It's wonderful. Yeah, I went out opening day, did a loop of the whole thing. Hardest wind I've ever encountered on the canal down at Dow's Lake, going one way. But coming back the other way was great. Once are with the wind. And but yeah, it is really fun. I actually went out Monday after I dug out that monument. I sort of looped back around and walked back up the Rideau Canal because I knew at least part of it would be plowed and there wouldn't be a lot of skaters out there because it's really hard to skate when there's a lot of snow on the ice. But even last night I was out. It's just fun to go down and walk along the canal. So it's preferable to skate, but even if I'm just going a couple blocks here and there, I'll usually use it when it's open. So enjoy yourself, Scott. You're not the biggest skater in the world, but you can hold your own, right?
Oh yeah. I didn't have skates till last year. Bought some to go skating on the canal, and it's pretty fun. My quads were a little sore after that, and but yeah, I can do it.
Well, enjoy yourself. Stay safe, both from the weather and from the COVID and from the cracks in the ice. You don't want that blood to be yours whenever you see those puddles out there. So, and for everybody else, be safe, enjoy yourselves. We'll be back with you again next week. But until then, keep those brooms on the ice and don't dump that intern.
Make the final.